All right. Well, this is the pastor with no answers, and hey, I'm consistent with this because I don't have any answers on this podcast either. All I can do is talk about my mental struggles, and you know what's crazy is one thing that a lot of people reach out to me about is more stuff on mental illness. And you know why? Because typically it's either them that's struggling with it and it helps them to hear other people struggling with it, or they know someone else who does and it helps them out. So either way, it's a win-win. And I would like to preface by saying that these guys, married couple, Richie and Rayah, they basically did not reach out to me to be on this podcast. I kind of found out a little bit about their story, and I kept hounding them, and probably over the course of 8 months, if I recall correctly, we finally got it nailed down. So here we are with Richie and Rayah, both of you BC Club members. Y'all support PWNA. I mean, y'all are just all in, man. Over the top for Jesus. Isn't that right?
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. We show it by supporting the bad Christian podcast and the pastor with no answer.
Yeah, it's probably blaspheming is what you're doing, so you have no shot at heaven at all.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal, listeners. Richie struggles with schizophrenia, which is something that I know very little about. And I've seen the movie Beautiful Mind, and obviously you don't learn everything from a movie, but I'll start right there, though. Richie, how helpful is that movie for someone to look at and learn a little bit about what you struggle with?
It's helpful as in you get to see how the delusion affects you, because that's one thing I can relate to that movie is, you have this delusion, you think these thoughts, and you think they're real, and then when it shows the part where it all comes crashing down, you start realizing it's all in his head. I went through the same process as well myself, so I can see some relation to that movie.
Yeah, totally. So this guy had imaginary friends, people that kind of befriended him in college. There was a guy that was informing him of some sort of conspiracy that they need to figure out and all that. What was that to you? I mean, did you have like an Ed Harris type character telling you that the Russians are attacking and you need to figure something out? What kind of hallucinations do you have?
Well, I didn't have any hallucinations. I saw people, but I'm trying to think, because there's I've had delusions where I believe certain things that weren't real, and I have hallucinations where I see things. So let me start with delusions. I used to have this delusion of where I used to really believe that there was this big war with aliens going on. There was good aliens and bad aliens. I played some key role in it, which sounds weird to talk about, but I really believed that.
Yeah.
And then for my hallucinations, what I see is really dark and negative. I'll see cuts appear upon my wrist, or I'll see cuts appear upon other people, and I'll just see them bleed, and it's just like, sometimes I can handle it, other times it just it's too intense and freaks me out, and I can't connect with people.
Yeah, totally. So when you can handle it, is it because you're kind of loosely holding on to reality and there's an awareness that it's not real, or it's just not as intense? Like when you are in those states of minds, how aware of you are, how aware are you of reality?
It usually depends on the intensity. It's kind of like depression. There are some days you can shake it off and be like, okay, you know what? Life's good. I really shouldn't be depressed. But other times, depression can be like super hard, and all you can do is just lay in bed. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I had talked to you guys prior about this leading up to this podcast, and that was a huge light bulb that went off for me, because I just couldn't wrap my mind around schizophrenia, and it's kind of hypocritical on my part, because there's a lot of people that can't wrap their mind around depression. And then it just occurred to me, I've told so many people that I can be having a great day today, in actuality, my life is good. Like, there's not a whole lot wrong with it. We've got a roof over our heads. We can save some money. Our kids are healthy. Our marriage isn't perfect, but it's a happy marriage. And tomorrow, however, with nothing changing at all, everything can just seem so dark, so grim, so horrible. Like my life, I'm a failure as a father. I'm letting my kids down. Before I know it, they're going to be out of the house and resent me. And like all these crazy, crazy thoughts. And right now, I just told y'all, hey, here are the things that I struggle with when I'm depressed. However, when I'm depressed, I can't point at those things and say, oh, you're not real, so I'm going to dismiss you. When you're in the moment, they are real. And over time, there are some times when I can make that distinction and help myself through, but sometimes it's just so intense, I can't see outside of that. Like a analogy that I use is like a fish that can't imagine being out of the water because water is all they know. When I'm in that deep state of depression, I just that's all that I know. I can't function outside of that. I mean, is that similar to what you're talking about with schizophrenia?
Yeah, with schizophrenia, yeah, it's like your thinking, your logic thinking just shuts down, and you can't reason your way out of it. You can't think your way out of it. You can't be talked out of it. You're there, and you just have to basically let the moment pass and just wait it out. That's what I do.
Right. Now, the sort of warfare scenario that you described, like, are you actively engaged physically in that? Like if you hear something about, aliens or something, do you get up out of your seat and go outside and look around and see what you have to do to protect your family or attack the bad aliens? I mean, what's going on?
Oh boy, that's a long story to tell.
You don't have to, but it is very interesting.
Yeah, it's like they would have me make little symbols for like magic or stuff like that would help them out, and I would start journaling like, okay, this is what they're telling me to do. Like, okay, I need to make this symbol and do this stuff to help them out. And it's weird talking about it because it sounds silly, but at the time I really believed it. I was like entrenched in this world that my mind had created. And it was
now. Do you go back to that delusion when you're in a bad place? Is that what creeps back up, or is it something new?
It's something that kind of creeps back up, but it's hard because in that world I made like friends and stuff, and like different aliens I would talk to, and they talk back to me like we're talking right now. They talk back to me in my own head just like we are talking right now. And so when I found out that this is not real, this is all a delusion, that was devastating. I felt like I lost a family member almost in a way.
Gosh, now so are we talking that went on for a year, 2 years, a month?
It went on for years.
Golly. And for our listeners' sake, are you a hardcore heroin user, cocaine user? Like they need to know that, because I'm sure a lot of people are just like, that makes sense. I've been on LSD trips and I got the same thing. I mean, tell people about your lifestyle.
I'm clean sober right now.
Yeah.
I dabble a little bit in marijuana use. Don't drink anymore because that has really negative effects on me and my health. It's bitten me in the ass way more times.
Yeah.
The only really hardcore drugs I've ever done was like opium. That's about it.
Yeah, but these were not drug-induced hallucinations, though.
No, these are just like what's going on in my mind.
Right. He had them before, so he had schizophrenia before the drug use.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I do relate to what you're saying when you say it sounds weird to even talk about, because I mean I could tell you 10 things that I've been very sad about, and it's very weird. Like I don't even understand in my mental place right now. Like an example that I use all the time, our listeners are probably sick of hearing it on this and Bad Christian, but I can remember driving down a busy highway in which I was going 55. The other cars were coming the other way on 55, and I wanted desperately for one of those cars to hit me. I was so depressed. I wasn't willing to jerk the steering wheel in their direction because I couldn't bring myself to that. But I thought to myself, God, if it was your will for one of these cars to hit me, I would just be so appreciative. That would free me. And I almost get choked up even saying that because I had 3 kids at the time. So that means that I was willing to leave my kids. I felt like that was the better option. I don't even understand where I was at. Like I don't get it. And that was depression hell, you're struggling with schizophrenia. I mean, it's just at a deeper level. And I do think people, they need to understand this. So you also told me about stuff that you would see on your body. What's that about, like cuts and things?
One of the dominating hallucinations that I've been experiencing is I'll see like cuts, like deep cuts appear upon my wrist, and I'll see the blood pour out. And sometimes when it's really intense, I can even feel the blood coming out and dripping on the floor. Like it's that intense. Like I could actually feel it. And I mean, when it's like that, it's hard to get out of that mindset. But I try to like, okay, my wrists are bleeding. I try to tell myself this is not real, and just like close my eyes and try to move forward. Sometimes when I see cuts appear upon other people, like it's harder when in the conversation I have to like close my eyes while I'm talking to somebody, because I'm like, okay, I'm seeing this happening right now, talking to somebody, there's cuts on their neck. I gotta figure a way to move through this. And sometimes it's just I can try to muster my way through it, and other times it's just like I shut down. I can't function anymore.
Yeah. So Rayah, I mean, and for the record, for our listeners' sake, I mean, I'm just going to be completely honest from my perspective. I am not a doubter. I'm not a skeptic. I feel like I have a good enough feel for you guys personally, but I think all of us could understand some skepticism. But Rayah, I would like for you to speak on that. Like, speak to the people that are just like, this just seems too bizarre. Like, I just don't understand it. So almost like be Richie's apologist for what he goes through. Like, why are you convinced that he's not making this up for attention?
You know,
and I know that's a very stupid question for someone who lives with him.
No, it's not stupid at all. It's crazy to think about how much stuff is going on inside of his brain that we don't understand. And, you know, our body malfunctions in so many different ways. And it's like, why would you think that the brain and like this super complicated organ wouldn't malfunction? You know, you have all sorts of different imbalances in chemicals that manifest themselves in physical ways, like diabetics or things like that. But then, and you know, especially Christians don't have any problem really taking medication or treating that in general. Obviously, some people do. But when it comes to mental health, then it's, you know, you need to pull your bootstraps up and you know, 1% of the population is affected by schizophrenia.
Wow.
1%. That means, you know, out of 100 people, somebody probably has it.
Yeah.
And most of us know at least 100 people.
Right.
How many people in your life are hiding like symptoms of mental illness and suffering alone? And, you know, if we start actually paying attention to each other, we'll actually see what those effects are. So my husband, there's no real motivation for him to fake it, because, you know, if he gets really bad, he goes to the hospital. It's not fun there. You know, one of them that he's been to, it was pretty open. There was visiting hours like all day. You know, we could have 5 people there to see him. We could bring him food, you know, bring him some bacon maple bars and stuff. But, you know, the other one that he went to was also a drug rehab facility, which he didn't need that, but he needed to have a more structured and rigorous thing, you know, and it's 1 visiting hour a day in the evening. And it's boring. It's brutal. And, you know, with this last time, he did actually try to get out there earlier than he should have.
Yeah.
You know, it seemed like he kind of just made the decision like, okay, I need to get back out. So I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to get back out. And he was not ready. He was still suicidal. He was still telling me and our pastor friend that, you know, that he was, the only way out was going to be to kill himself.
Yeah.
And he was planning on, when he got out, going over to his parents' house and staying there for a couple of days while he, you know, kind of got everything back together and transitioned out of being at the hospital. And we narrowly avoided him getting out, and he had a huge paranoid episode. And, you know, and then he comes out of it, and over days, like, so he has this big explosion, doesn't trust anybody, slams his hand into the wall, severe brain damage, or kill himself.
Yeah.
But it was his fist, and he, so then, you know, and he's screaming at me, calling me a bitch and all this stuff. And then over the couple of days, so after that, they medicated him, obviously, with extra stuff. And over the course of a couple of days, I'm like, how are you feeling? Do you trust me yet? And the first couple of days is like, nope,
Right.
sorry, no, I don't. And I'm like, it's okay. I don't expect you to trust me. I can't force you to trust me. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking if you do yet.
Is that part of the schizophrenia too? As far as not trusting you?
The confusion, and then it's the paranoia. So thinking that everyone's against you, or, we all make these funny jokes about tinfoil hats and stuff, but it's tied to schizophrenia in that, a lot of people with schizophrenia describe the feeling of like the thoughts being like pulled out of your head, like before you can even think them.
Right.
So, every time I hear that joke, it's like, oh, but you guys don't know what like the absolute terrifying fear of actually going through that is, and so I do think it's important to be gentle with people about like, hey, don't be an asshole. Like, you need to watch how you're talking. Like, we've gotten really good about policing our language about race and about like mental handicaps, and that's probably an outdated term now.
I messed that one up too. Special needs, I think.
Right, yeah, special needs. So, but we still say, oh my gosh, she's a psycho and all that stuff, and it's like, do you know what that's like for someone? It's devastating.
Right.
And it's very obviously devastating in Richie's case.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really undeniable, and it's kind of nice because to be honest, I see the Lord working in a lot of different ways, and I can see a lot of things that the Lord's doing in Richie, whether Richie can buy into that right now or not. And he is like the perfect person to talk about this, because he's like good looking, and good looking helps.
Right.
When you have something that's scary, if you have an ugly person or a good looking person, you give the good looking person the benefit of the doubt a lot of times. So,
unfortunately,
more
you're
psychology.
Right.
Yep. But he's a good looking guy. He's really nice and gentle. He's just like, he works 40 plus hours a week. Usually he's not working right now. He's going to be off on disability. But he was working 40 hours a week and just would sacrifice, bending over backwards for people.
Yeah.
So he's such a great face for such a scary disease.
Yeah, totally. But let me back up when you said something about when people say psycho and how that can mean to people that are actually family members with someone who struggles. Would you say that's on par with a family that has a Down syndrome child and they hear someone say, oh, that's so retarded? That sounds differently to them, just like it would sound differently for you guys to hear someone ridicule someone by using schizo. Oh, you're such a schizophrenic.
Yes, because I give people tons of grace because people don't understand this, and that's why I'm talking about it. So, but like when you say it like that, you're putting a negative connotation on it,
right? And
you're like moralizing it,
right?
Like, she's a psycho because she like smacked her boyfriend and like slashed his tires because he looked at another girl,
right?
Like, psychosis is not something that you can control, and it's a really scary state to be in. So if that person actually was in psychosis, you're an asshole for talking like that about her, So it just, I don't know. I don't like hearing it, but I still say that stuff sometimes. So totally. I'm not perfect.
Totally. So what's y'all's background religion wise, and where are you at now spiritually? It seems like, Rayah, you alluded to, I believe God's working in his life, whether he believes it or not. So where are you guys at with all that?
I'll go first. Well, I started when I grew up. My parents were Seventh-day Adventists. We were that for most of my upbringing. And then we went to some other denominations. And then later on in life, I got hooked up into this really small, super Pentecostal church that really charismatic. Have you ever heard of Charles and Francis Hunter? Nope. They do back in the early, late 90s, they did this big healing, miracles and stuff like that. They teach people how to heal the sick, and command.
It's formulaic.
Right. It's formulaic. Right. Yeah, that's what it is.
That's right, because Jesus was really formulaic. He sometimes would touch people, then sometimes he would make mud. He always did the same thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, super spiritual stuff. And then once, I met my wife and brought her to the church, and then they made me how do I explain it?
Well, they wanted me to be a part of the church, of course,
Yeah.
because they wanted to hang on to him. So I started coming with him, and then it was like, I don't think this is right. And then it was like way lots of red flags, and I was like, ugh. And then I was like, I'm not asking you to stop going, but I can't go here anymore.
Right.
And so I'm not asking you to stop going there, but I think you should at least pray about it, because, here's some distinct red flags, and this is really controlling and really abusive behavior from the pastor. And then, after I left, then everyone was saying that I left because I was offended. I was like, no, I just think you're using scripture incorrectly.
Right.
And then shortly after that, they pretty much pressured Richie to break up with me, and then he left.
Gotcha. Richie, how revealing were you about your mental health with these guys? Because it seems like they'd be the type to write it off as all spiritual and demonic.
Oh yeah, they would write it off as demonic. Any illness would be a spirit of sickness or whatever. There's always some kind of spirit doing some kind of work, and you had to command in the name of Jesus to go away or something like that.
Right.
So, yeah, they were really spiritual about that kind of stuff. But
now I think you said in a prior conversation as well that it's at some point you felt like you were having a deeper, more personal relationship with God. Come to find out that was your schizophrenia as well. Tell us about that.
Okay, yeah. Well, one of the things they taught was how to hear the voice of God. And basically, it's just you say a question in English, and then you pray in tongues, and then you be silent, and God's supposed to talk back to you. Well, with my schizo, I thought I was hearing God. Like, this was so cool. And then I would talk to this voice, and this voice would talk back to me.
Was it a deep voice? I'm curious. Was it like what you would think about God? Like, hi, Richie, I love you, son, or...
It was more of a kind of a light voice. Not as deep, but
like Michael Jackson. God talks like Michael Jackson. Holy cow!
Yeah.
Hey, he was delusional. I know.
I was delusional.
So, why why were you able to eventually write that off as not God?
Because later on, I started examining the things they were teaching, and I didn't find it was lining up with scripture, but I noticed that voice suddenly stopped, because that voice was kind and loving, and that voice became really negative and just really negative. I don't know how to describe it, but like that never. Like I tried doing what they said to do, like how to hear the voice of God, and I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't hear him anymore. It was always that negative voice, and for a while I was struggling. Like, did I miss out on God? Did God leave me, or am I being attacked demonically? And I spent a good couple of years trying to figure this out, and I've come to believe that it's more chemical balance now. It's not. I think it's just over spiritualized.
Yeah. Now, how possible is it for you guys to be sitting there right now and me to be sitting here, and I see Richie jerk his head to the right, and he says, "Oh man, I'm seeing, someone's talking to me right now. I'm sorry that I'm distracted." Like, is that possible, or when you are engaged in human interaction, that's a rarity?
It's possible. It's happened before, and so I usually just shut my eyes and just like try to reset myself, try to be mindful of what's going on. Like, okay, that's happening right now. I could, if it's not intense, I can try to ignore it and just pretend like it didn't happen. But if it's too intense, it's just like I can't continue this conversation anymore. I just can't do it.
Do either of y'all understand scientifically what's happening in the brain? I have no idea. Have y'all ever been educated on here's the parts of your brain that's misfiring and here's what they're doing and all of that?
Yeah. I've been taking the NAMI National Alliance of Mental Illness family to family course. That has a ton of really great information and resources. Mm-hmm. It's been literally life-saving and life-changing to go to, and it's free. And they're all over the country, but they were showing us some brain scans and stuff like that, and they think that it's actually kind of a group of brain diseases. So that's why it kind of presents itself in different ways for different people. He, definitely experiences most of the symptoms. So he has it's a significant case, but he is being treated and he's complying with all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's not as debilitating as it could be.
Right.
But, it just, like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
And that's a big reason that a lot of people stop taking their medications, because the side effects and all that stuff are really bad and they're really expensive.
Yeah.
Like, one of his drugs is $5,000 a month before insurance.
And I'm assuming you're insured or you're very rich.
Yeah, no, we're insured.
Yeah.
So
I was about to call you Richie Rich, man.
well, I mean, it's either Richie Rich or, I mean, it's Richard Dickerson, so old Dick Dickerson.
Yeah.
So Dick.
What are you on lots of medications?
I take 2 antipsychotics, 1 antidepressant, and a mood stabilizer. So
Now, would a psychologist or psychiatrist say that your depression is a result of the schizophrenia? Are they interrelated, or are they just two separate issues going on? Because my OCD, I believe, feeds into my depression, and I think that's what sets me off.
They're so closely interwoven, and like, so he is schizoaffective, which means he's got the paranoid schizophrenia plus a major mood disorder, and he has bipolar 2, which means he has depression, and then he's had one or more episodes of hypo or hypermania, or not hypermania, but hypo or mania. And so he tends to be more depressive and stuff, and I think some OCD too, that we're kind of trying to figure out, is it OCD or is it obsessive thoughts that are linked to the schizophrenia, and trying to like weed out how to do that. And, does it matter what's causing those obsessive thoughts when we're trying to figure out how to treat them? Mm-hmm. I don't know. So and they say that family members, especially if the patient's honest, are really the best at knowing what's going on. So as a family member, you do have a lot more knowledge than a lot of times the psychiatrist. Like, they know the right drugs.
Right.
But you're the one in the trenches and saying, like, yeah, I know he said that he's doing okay, but he's been in the shithole for a week, or whatever. So it's really helpful to have as much family involvement and family education as possible, because then you can support, the other person. Like, I don't know if your wife, like, what she's done, what Priscilla's done for finding out more about depression. I know I was really lazy about it in the first couple years. And then as it got worse, I was like, oh shit, this is a real thing that we're going to have to like really deal with. And, God doesn't go, oh, well, you're a Christian, so you're not going to get the paranoid delusions and weird voices and visions, because that would be weird for you.
Yeah.
Christians get it too. So it's hard.
Now, how well aware of his mental condition were you before getting married, like during y'all's dating and engagement and all of that?
He told me when we were dating, and he thought he was healed, and he wasn't showing any signs or symptoms of it.
Yeah.
I had just a tiny bit of knowledge about it from like a high school psychology class. And because I was raised Christian and had spent some time Pentecostal and some time here and there and whatever, it was like, okay, that seems plausible. I don't know why God couldn't heal a mental illness. But then, it slowly got more and more obvious that it was not gone, and we needed to take some action steps for it.
What's the most hurtful thing for you, Rayah? Like, what's the most painful thing for you in all of this experience of seeing him go through this?
I would say probably the lack of empathy, and it's the negative symptoms. So there's positive symptoms like the hallucinations and the things that add to the illness, and then there's negative symptoms. So they're things that get kind of taken away or eaten up by the illness. So he loses some of his empathy. He isn't able to like really pay attention to me as a person with needs and kind of like exchange that support with each other.
Right.
So I've gotten really good about, going to my friends for that kind of support. And, sometimes we just like, all we can do is just hang out, and that's fine.
Right.
You know, it's weird. It's a hard one to navigate, especially as a Christian, because I'm supposed to be like this submissive wife and stuff. And it's like, yeah, who am I supposed to submit to? Crazy pants?
Right.
No, like the guy who hears the voice of God?
Right.
Probably not. I think I need to lead spiritually here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean,
it's weird.
Honestly, I think that's a great point with how black and white Christians are. I mean, there are some times where I'm incapable of leading my family. What am I supposed to just keep leading it? I mean, okay, hey, out of all 6 of you, one of you's 5, one of you's 7, one's 9, one's 11. The other of you are adults. One of you's depressed out of your mind, and you've sharp-tempered and agitated with everybody. Who leads? My wife does. Good Lord. It's a simple choice. Gosh.
Yeah.
What?
Totally. And how much pressure does it add to you when you know that you have to be on the ball and all that stuff? That doesn't help your mental illness when you're under pressure.
Yeah, totally. And I totally relate to what you're saying in regards to Richie lacking stuff. I mean, there are times when things come out of my mouth, words, like I'm vomiting. No, but like things that I say when they come out of my mouth, and it's just not Joey Svensson. Like it's very hard towards my wife. It's like I said, sharp-tongued, very agitated, mean. I mean, just flat out mean. And when I'm in my right mind, I feel so bad. I'm like, I wish it was enough of an excuse just to say, I was depressed, I'm sorry. And sure, that can help a little bit. So Priscilla's not like, okay, well, at least you don't think I'm a horrible person and talk to me like I'm a piece of shit. That's good news. But it still hurt. Like I can't just flip a switch and be like, oh, okay, you were depressed. Now I'm fine with all of that. Thank you for saying that. I mean, it's just not that easy. Are you ever fearful that Richie will try to take his life? And I guess before you answer that, what does it look like, those moments that lead up to Richie needing to go to the hospital? Is it, Richie, or is it something you say, like, we've got to go to the hospital, I can't handle this? Or is it something Rayah suggests, or what?
It's usually something Rayah or one of my friends have suggested. It's usually I don't see it. It's like I'm incapable of seeing it. But it's usually my wife or my friends who look at me and they're like, man, you're in a bad spot. You've got this place and you need to get help because you're on that edge where you could do something like that, take your own life. So it's been them.
Yeah, I mean, for him, he really internalizes. He's just got a long history and some trauma and PTSD that he has. So he really internalizes, and guilt and things like that are feelings that are really normal with the illness anyway. But then you add in the extra stuff that his life experiences brought him. And then you have just this recipe for someone who's just like super, full of shame and guilt, especially when the symptoms are their strongest. So for him, really, he's locked in the bedroom, not locked, but he's in the bedroom and he's curled up into a ball and he's shaking and he just looks like he's squeezing and clenched and like trying to just implode on himself. And usually he's crying and he just is shaking. And as the conversation goes along, it slowly devolves. The couple times that it's happened, it's like, we started out talking and he's crying that he can't go on and that it's too much for him and he doesn't know what to do. And he just please make it stop. He can't take it anymore. Please make it stop. And he's just begging. And it's like, good Lord. And I know that he has a somewhat traumatic history with hospitals in the past. So the first time that I was like, shit, we have to go to the hospital. Like, I cannot get him through this. It was like, I'm asking him to walk his darkest road and his scariest thing while he's in the middle of like not being able to trust anyone. And I was like, I hope you still trust me, and I hope that you forgive me if you right now don't agree with what's going on, but you need help and I can't help you. So it's probably the most heartbreaking thing ever.
I mean, what you're describing, I hope, and I know that this is not suicide in a nutshell. Not everybody that commits suicide is dealing with schizophrenia, but I do hope that this sheds light on people that want to quickly dismiss suicide as being a selfish act, because the picture that y'all just painted, I think it should be obvious to our listeners that, oh, so Richie didn't feel like he had any other choice. He was either going to be tormented, like off the charts, with nowhere to go and no one to trust, or escape it all. I mean, it just seems like, and that's not any sort of encouragement for anyone to commit suicide. If you're listening to this and you're suicidal, that's not what I'm saying. I would say go get help. But hopefully that makes sense to people, that Richie's not someone that says, man, this is just really hard. I didn't think life was going to be this hard. I know I'm married and a dad. I'm just going to end it. I think y'all are painting a clear picture of why some people commit suicide.
Yeah, well, I mean, for him, like, he has these voices in there, and sometimes they're telling him to do things and to other people or to hurt other people, and he doesn't want to. Like, that's the last thing on his mind. And what's funny is schizophrenics are painted as kind of a violent, on all the crime shows. That's the paranoid schizophrenic. Yeah, you just snapped and went crazy. But it's like, paranoid schizophrenics are like far, far more likely to be the receiver of violent attacks than to be the one actually acting out violently, because most of the time they're just really scared people who don't know what's going on and are super confused.
Right.
And that's a scary place to be.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
I mean, I don't even blame someone if they did attack somebody. I'd be like, can you blame him? He thinks you're a bear, or whatever.
Right. Richie, and tell me if this question doesn't make sense. Like, is the authority that the voices have over you, because they obviously do, because you feel like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? These voices are telling me to do stuff. Is that part of the delusion too? Because right now, if some dude walked in your house and you looked at Rayah and Rayah said, no, he's real, I see him too, and he said, well, I want you to kill your wife, you would say, I'm not going to kill my wife. I'll kill you if you try to kill my wife. So why do these voices have some authority in your mind? And that may be impossible to answer. I mean, I have.
Well, I don't know, but it's just, I guess, because a lot of times when they get really intense, they just repeat over and over and over again. So,
gosh.
It becomes a thing of like, can I wait this out? Can I resist all these commands to do this thing? It just being repeated over in your head, and that's, I think, they make it some authority to that. And that's what scares me the most, is like, what if I break and I can't say no to them? That's a real scary part. Oh, hey, Jonah.
What is up? Is that Jonah, you said?
Yeah. Little
hey,
guy.
Bud. What's up?
And, like, he's said before, he would, and this is really common, he would, in schizophrenics and stuff, he would absolutely end it before he would ever hurt anybody.
Right.
Because that's not what he wants.
Right.
But it's just like, you get so scared that when you hear that over and over and over again in your head, that you just feel like it's inevitable that you'll act out on it, even though statistics say you won't, because that's not who you are. That's what's going on with your disease.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And this is kind of a very raw marriage question, but Richie, are you ever worried that Rayah will give up on you?
In the past, like when I first started getting diagnosed, when I first went to the hospital and when I knew her, I was afraid of that. But now I'm less afraid, because she's stuck with me so much and been there and done a lot to help me out. So
yeah, she's got a track record.
Yeah, she has a good track record. Exactly. So,
gotcha. Is this, we talk about this a lot, especially on the Bad Christian podcast. Is this something that you guys ever find humor in between the two of you? Like, is this something that you guys ever joke around about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously, humor is such a way to like break tension, and like, the times where he's been in the hospital and I've been like having panic attacks, it's like, have a panic attack, and then all of a sudden we're making some stupid joke about it, because it's like your brain needs that humor release.
Well, good, because I was going to make a suggestion for Richie, and that is, when you get really angry and you are in your right mind, if you slip up and call Rayah like a stupid bitch or something, you can just say, "Oh, I snapped out of it. I don't think that at all. I wasn't in my right mind." And that's your apology. That's your apology. Well, I think that you guys are very courageous people for talking about this. For too many reasons to count. I mean, first of all, it's very vulnerable information, Richie, for you to give about yourself, and Ray, I know it's just as painful for you, and to just kind of put y'all's hearts out here. You obviously see the value in it, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing it, because it is hard to talk about our personal stuff, but my gosh, it just is going to be so helpful. Tell us some of y'all's endeavors with how you want to use what you guys are going through to further that help for other people, whether it's just as, it could be just as simple as people not feeling as alone with their struggles. But what are you guys doing?
Well, we have a blog and a couple of social media accounts, and it's Depth of Echoes. And whatever you get out of that name is whatever you get out of it.
There you go.
I don't even know if I fully understand why I called it that, but it's just like every time I've started to speak about this stuff or anything, it seems like I have at least a couple people like, thank you for talking about that. Thank you for this. I was just at a group last night and someone's like, thank you so much for talking about anxiety and OCD. And I was like, yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, this sucks. Like, let's talk about it. And there's so many people that are dealing with this stuff, and they just feel alone or isolated, or like nobody knows. We make jokes about OCD all the time, and it's like, no, you don't. It's not about taking your shoes off before you walk on the white carpet. It's about, doing this action, whatever it is, and it feels really stupid, but so that like your family doesn't die, or, everyone doesn't burn to death or something like that. It's way different. And, then there's other lesser known symptoms and things like that. And if we could just start talking about this stuff and be like, hey, we're all a little crazy, and that's fine. Like, stop making it a bad thing. You can't help it. Like, don't own guilt or shame that doesn't belong on you.
Right.
Like, you didn't do that to yourself. Your brain is not that, is not that controllable. Yeah. You can't do that.
For sure. So, you said Death of Echoes?
Depth.
So, Depth of Echoes. See, I thought it was really morbid. Death of Echoes. And I was like, no, that makes sense to me. These voices he's hearing, man. Well, guys, I appreciate it. And did you already say that, did you tell people that you guys were starting a podcast as well?
Oh, yeah. We are working on that, just getting the last bits of technical stuff worked out. Have a bunch of interviews lined up. We'll be talking to people with mental illness, people who have loved ones with mental illness, and then professionals in the different industries.
Very cool.
Everywhere from hopefully some psychiatrists will be willing to come on, but to people, life coaches, and people who help with self-care and things like that. So
well, very cool, guys. Thank y'all for your time. It has been a pleasure.
Awesome.
And thanks for being so supportive with what this knucklehead, yours truly, is trying to do as well. I appreciate it.